Naessens show is on in five, four, three, two, one.
Welcome to the Phil Naessens Show. I'm happy to have you here. Today we're going to talk Indiana Pacers basketball with Tom Lewis later on, fantasy basketball with Roto Wire's Colin McEwen, and Memphis Grizzlies basketball with my friend Kevin Lipe. And joining me to start it all off on the line from Memphis, Tennessee, star reporter of the MemphisFlyer.com/Beyond the Arc blog. Please welcome Kevin Lipe to the show. Kevin, how you doing, man? Welcome to the show.
Bill, what's up, buddy? Glad you're alive.
I'm glad I'm alive too, man. I'm still a little shaky. I had a fever like crazy for a whole week. I mean, I drank, 12 liters of water in about 3 days and went to the toilet twice because I was just sweating and I lost my voice. It was awful, but I'll tell you what, I rebounded. I even did a guest appearance on the Grizzly Bear Blues radio show, and where I told them I thought that the Grizzlies were coming back. The Houston series back-to-back would be the one that mattered, and I think I was right. Were you surprised that they took two from Houston? Because I was surprised they took two.
Yeah, honestly, going into the back-to-back against Houston, I was kind of expecting. I knew that it was possible for them to win two. I feel like Houston is a pretty favorable matchup if the Grizzlies kind of show up and play the right way. So I wasn't shocked, but I definitely was expecting a split. That's what I thought would happen. So for the Grizzlies to go into Houston on Friday night and just kind of squeak out of there with a win, and then just blow them out on Saturday night, that's the part that was very surprising to me. I was not expecting, that big of a win for the second win in a row. That was crazy to me.
See, I kind of thought along the same lines as you did because I was reading your blog and I completely agreed with you. I thought if it was going to be close on Friday night, that it would be ugly on Saturday.
Yeah.
And I thought they'd get blown out in their own barn, and it turns out they were the ones doing the blowing out, which was a very good thing to see from a Grizzly standpoint. Are you breathing a little easier now that the boys have seemed to righted the ship a little bit?
Well, there's still a lot of tough basketball coming up. You've got Portland coming up on Tuesday night at Portland. That's always tough. It's a back-to-back Portland and Sacramento. One thing that I think hasn't really been talked about very much is, yes, the Grizzlies' second half of their schedule is against easier teams, but there are a lot more back-to-backs in the second half. You've got them playing Tuesday and Wednesday, and then Friday and Saturday, 4 games in 5 nights. So these are teams that maybe aren't the best, except for obviously Portland is the best. But the rest of these teams, Sacramento, Minnesota, Milwaukee, they're not the best teams, but they're going to be dead tired by the time they get to Milwaukee. So, they're not out of the woods yet. They're kind of gaining ground on that 8th playoff spot, but kind of the number of games that they're going to have to play in the next week or two. I really think it's going to take a concentrated effort for them to be able to close that ground. And they can't really say, okay, well, we beat Houston, now we can kind of take a couple of games off. It's not going to work that way for them.
No, it won't. That's for sure. But I'm pretty optimistic regarding the Portland game because I think the Grizz seem to play better on the road, and they seem to respond to the hotel cooking better, I guess. But
yeah.
And I predicted on this show, I'm on the record as saying that they would be 3-1 after the Sacramento game, and I think I'm going to be right on that one, and I'm kind of glad I am because I still think that the Grizzlies are going to wind up in the NBA Finals.
Well, I'm not going to go on record predicting that they'll be in the finals yet, but I think 3-1 since they won both Houston games, 3-1 is definitely doable. It's possible that they could win all 4 if they can really kind of exert their will on the Trailblazers. It remains to be seen whether they can actually do that or not. Portland is really good this year, especially in their own building. But it's going to be a good game. So I think 3-1 is definitely reasonable. And then you've got Minnesota coming up on the 31st on Friday. You've got a home game against Milwaukee on Saturday. Those are winnable, even though it's going to be your third game in 4 nights and your fourth game in 5 nights. Fourth game in 5 nights. But I think that it's this has potential to be a really good week for the Grizzlies in terms of catching up to Dallas, catching up to Phoenix, and trying to grab that 8th spot.
Oh, yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. And the thing is, the way the Grizzlies are playing is back to Grizzly ball, it seems. The defense is clamping down, and they're eking games out a little bit. When they go against Minnesota, Minnesota's a team that loses games. I've said this a couple of times this week already, that they've lost more games by 4 points than I've lost track of. That's how many they've lost. And that bodes well for the Grizzlies because you're back to Grizzly ball now. But there's a question I wanted to ask you from your site. What are Gasol growing pains? What are those?
Okay. So, Marc Gasol came back against the Oklahoma City Thunder. And since Gasol came back, you've seen the Grizzlies' pace drop. Their scoring has dropped. They had some kind of defensive lapses. I'm thinking mostly about the game against the Pelicans that they lost on last Monday. And, it looked like everybody was kind of out of sync. Gasol hasn't played in a long time. He and Conley weren't even really always sure where each other were on the floor. There were a lot of missed passes, a lot of bad passes. He's never played with Courtney Lee before, never played with James Johnson before. So, when I was talking about the Gasol growing pains, it's kind of talking about the process of reintegrating Marc Gasol into what the Grizzlies were doing. Because they, let's face it, they were winning without him. They won 5 in a row from that Phoenix game without him up to the Kings game with him. So they won those games without him by picking up the pace. You saw a lot of use of Ed Davis and James Johnson at the power forward spot, kind of some really athletic play instead of kind of the normal pounded inside Grizzly ball. But, Gasol is not going to necessarily operate that well inside that system. And so his return really kind of put the brakes on what was going on. And you had a team of guys that was playing well together. And now they have to figure out how to reintegrate Marc Gasol, who, he's a great player, but he has a very kind of specific way that he plays.
Oh yeah, exactly, and that's just it. Now, the other thing I wanted to ask you, because this to me it doesn't seem to make sense. Dave Joerger's rotations, they're just strange sometimes, and I want to shake my head. Look at Costa Koufis now. He's not playing as many minutes as he was before. And you would think that with Gasol coming back, you'd want to be careful with him a little bit. But he doesn't seem to do that. And when he does, he's not going to Koufis anymore. Is there a reason for this?
I really don't know. Even before Gasol returned, the rotations were a little bit questionable, right? He's been all year. He's been bad about leaving the starters in for 8 or 9 minutes during the third quarter before he makes a sub. He doesn't seem to have settled into any kind of pattern of like, okay, Ed Davis is always going to go in at the 8-minute mark of the first quarter. Courtney Lee is going to come out, 6 minutes into the second quarter, that kind of thing. It doesn't seem like there's any kind of pattern. Lionel Hollins always used to talk about how he coached by feel, and he kind of got he didn't really have like a set pattern of how he was going to put guys in. He just put in who he felt like he should put in at the time. And, it worked well for Lionel Hollins, but I think Joerger is just not sure what his feel is yet. He's trying to coach by feel, and he just can't. He doesn't really have a feel for what he's doing at all, and so he's kind of just throwing guys out there whenever he decides to throw guys out there. He's got to look at some lineup numbers or something and try to figure out how to best utilize the guys that he has, because I know the return of Gasol has kind of thrown a wrench into what he was doing that was winning him games, but you got to figure out who your go-to guys are and when you're going to go to them. You just have to.
Well, you think he would have figured that out when Gasol was not there, because he had no choice. But back to Koufos, I mean, he played 6 minutes against New Orleans, 4 minutes on Friday night against Houston. Then he got 24 minutes, mostly in mop-up time on Saturday. So it just doesn't make sense. And I think what we're going to do, and since you see him more often than I do, I'm going to send you one of those blind men canes and give him that so he can feel. So get his feel, because his rotations are making me crazy, and I don't need to feel any worse than I have this past week. But really, I just don't understand some of his rotations. And I guess this is my opinion anyway, and I guess I'll share it with you because I do watch the Grizzlies, as you know.
Yep.
One of the things that I said on the other night on the show, I'll say it here with you and see what you think, is that, and I'm defending Joerger here, is this: you basically have three different teams. You have the first bunch of Grizzlies who were very unmotivated. They weren't really into it. They played lackadaisical. Then you had this Grizzly team, or I guess toward the end of the lackadaisical period, they went out west. They won 4 in a row. They started to turn it around. Then Gasol goes out, and it became Joerger ball, really, where they ran again, ran. Connolly was wide. He had some more freedom to run, and things were good. Randolph was passing the ball like I'd never seen him before. And now with Gasol back, it's a team I don't yet have, that doesn't have an identity. What do you think about that?
No, I think that's accurate. I think after Gasol went out and, Pondexter went out, Tony Allen was hurt for a while, Ed Davis was hurt for a while. Once they got to having more than 9 players, they really started to kind of unify around kind of what was going on. And especially the addition of James Johnson, that was kind of the turning point to me for if we're going to call it Joerger ball. You started to see the pace pick up. You started to see, these really using more athleticism than, raw violence like Zach Randolph and Marc Gasol tend to do. Everything sort of shifted. Conley had so much more space to run in with Gasol not at the high post that he really kind of blew up and took his game to a whole nother level. And then you had the Courtney Lee deal. So you replace a guy who wasn't really shooting and can't defend in Jared Bayless with a guy who can shoot really well and defends really well, Courtney Lee. So everything kind of congealed right before Gasol came back. Everything was kind of coming together without Gasol. And so kind of at the peak of the quote unquote Joerger ball style, then Gasol comes back and it's like a switch flips. They're scoring 110, 108 points, and now they're scoring, 89, 90 points. And they kind of don't look motivated, honestly. Tony Allen is still gone. It's weird. It's hard to put a finger on kind of where they are right now and what they're trying to do. They're making it work against Houston, but it's really going to be interesting to see kind of over this stretch run of the next couple of months what they end up doing, what kind of team they end up being. I don't think they know right now.
And that's just it. They're a team without an identity right now, and they better figure it out quick, because this isn't going to be easy for them to crawl back into it, but I think they can. Now, you were at the game when they played the Kings toward the end with Rudy Gay, his 3rd uniform in a year that he's wore in the FedEx Forum.
Yeah.
But that was one of the strangest things that I've seen, man. What was that all about, real quick?
Are you talking about the end of the game?
Yeah, the end of the game with the held ball call.
Yeah, so, Rudy was trying to do his late game heroics thing. He kind of ran into Tayshaun Prince, and Tayshaun just stood there with his arms straight up, and Rudy kind of went up, and he had to go back down to the floor with the ball. But it wasn't because Tayshaun had his hand on the ball. It was because Rudy just dropped the ball. He lost the ball, and it was kind of rolling around on the ground, and he had to pick it up again. When he came back up, Tayshaun swiped the ball out of his hands and got a steal. And after Tayshaun stole the ball, that's when Mark Davis blew the whistle. And then he kind of stood there for 2 or 3 seconds and then just said, okay, well, I guess that was a jump ball. It didn't make any sense. It should have either been a steal. Could have been a foul. It could have been a travel on Rudy Gay. There's like 4 different things that he could have called. None of them were a jump ball, but a jump ball is what he called. I asked Tayshaun about it after the game. I said, what did he explain that call to you? And he said, no, not really. He said something that was Tayshaun who told me. Mark Davis explained, well, he went back down to the floor, and Tayshaun was like, yeah, because he dropped the ball.
Yeah,
so it was a weird call. I've never really seen anything quite like that.
It was an inadvertent whistle, and he didn't have the courage enough to say it. That's why Malone went crazy. Anyway,
yeah.
Kevin, great stuff today. Thank you so much for being on the show with me.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Anytime.
That's Kevin Lipe, and you can find him over at memphisflyer.com/beyondthearc. And we'll be right back. You're listening to The Phil Naessens Show.
This is The Phil Naessens Show.
And it's the reason Al Gore invented the Internet.
And we'll be right back after these brief announcements.
Do you know your fantasy sports? Would you like to make money at it? DraftStreet.com and The Phil Naessens Show would like to help you get started making money playing fantasy sports today. And we'll even give you the chance to get started making money today for free. On me. That's right. All you have to do is head on over to PhilNaessens.com or visit the show notes for this show. Click the Draft Street image at the top of the page and start making money playing fantasy sports at DraftStreet.com today.
Riveting talk radio.
People cannot get away from the internet.
Well, I think it probably comes from porn as well. You know what I mean? That's got to be a big, strong thing.
Oh, that's gross. That's disgusting.
It freaks me out.
My cheeks are sealed.
We love talk radio.
Bend over, baby.
Do you see what I'm saying?
WeirdTalkSuperstation.com.
Better than sex.
I don't know how good sex is.
We're going to do a lot of drinking.
Talk radio. Bend over, baby. That was great.
Brewtown Sports is your source for Brewers news and notes. Join Mr. Brewtown as he keeps you up to date on all the happenings of your Milwaukee Brewers and Major League Baseball. Follow the show on Facebook and Twitter, Brewtown Sports. Listen 24/7 at BrewtownSports.podomatic.com.
If you like baseball, you should be checking out BaseballPodcasts.net. It's one of the best places you can go on the internet to listen to independent baseball talk shows. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on our radio player that can be heard around the world. So won't you tune in and give us a listen at BaseballPodcast.net. You can also listen to the great Phil Naessens Show here. See you there at BaseballPodcast.net.
Hi, this is Phil Naessens from This Week in Tennis and the Phil Naessens Show. Max Sports Channels offers the best in sports talk radio, as well as great music 24 hours a day. It's my daily destination, and I hope it's yours. The sports talk begins each and every day at 3 p.m. and ends around 9 p.m. Special programming on the weekends, and in between all that, the hottest music on the internet. That's Max Sports Channels. Make it your daily destination.
You're listening to AFR, the Armed Forces Radio Network.
And now back to the Phil Naessens Show.
Oh, you again.
My next guest is a psychologist and writer whose main interest focuses on relationships between people. He has been writing since he was 21 years of age, having his first piece published in 1986. His previous works include Ultraviolence and Carla and several others. And tonight, author Marc Berry joins us to discuss his latest book, Hollywood Shakedown. Please welcome author Marc Berry to the Phil Naessens Show. Marc, how you doing today?
I'm not too bad, Phil. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. I'm learning how to speak today.
That's brilliant.
I'll tell you what, sometimes it's hard to get it all out there. But anyway, it's great to have you here. This is your first appearance, hopefully of many, on this program. And so
that'd be great.
And what we want to do is kind of introduce you a little bit before we get into the book, which was outstanding, by the way. And you'll be able to read the review on my philnaessens.com site. Anyway, can you tell us who you are and how long you've been a full-time writer? Because there's a difference between when your first piece was published and who you are today, correct?
That's correct, yeah. But my first piece was published in 1986, but I was already working as a psychologist then. But I wrote several articles and several columns that were published in the mid-80s. And then I stopped. I didn't write until 2004, and then I got the bug again. And I set up a business called Green Wizard Publishing in 2012. But I've been writing since 2009, full time, more or less. And I wrote Hollywood Shakedown in 2009, which was my first book. And I write full-length novels too. I've written 6 full-length novels in the last 3 years. And I consider myself a full-time writer, publisher, and editor.
And you should. You've written quite a few books. You're trying to set the market on fire, aren't you? Working hard. Now,
well,
go ahead,
it's you've got to get in a very, very, very intense industry, independent literature using Kindles and independently published paperbacks. You've got to have a presence, and you've got to have a lot of work out there nowadays. You can't just have the one book or be completely lost.
Well, you definitely have more than one book. Now, Hollywood Shakedown. I enjoyed the book, by the way, and I think
thank you.
You know that you already have seen the review that I wrote, because I like to send you guys the review beforehand to make you happier before you come on the show. But here's the thing: this is a great book, folks. But Marc, where did the idea come from for Hollywood Shakedown?
I've got a long history of friends in America. I've had 2 relationships in America, and I've got 5 or 6 different friends, and I've made a lot of visits. I've visited America and Canada between 8 and 10 times. And a friend of mine in Houston challenged me to write a short story with 3 different elements in it, all of which feature in Hollywood Shakedown. And it just kept writing. It was like Forrest Gump of writing. Basically, I just continued to write and write and write until, instead of a short story of 1,000 words, I had a novel of 120,000. So I owe Paul in Houston a big favor. And it's basically set in LA and Chicago and London. It's a lot of travel involved in there, in places I've been. And it's a celebration of Anglo-American culture too. So it's things I'm interested in on that front. Yeah,
you definitely the main character, Buddy Chin, has definitely traveled, and those are the steps that you've taken as well, correct?
Yeah. From about 2004 to 2007, I was always on the road. I must have visited America 3 times a year. Places like, I've been to France, to Ireland twice. I've been to the Dominican Republic. I've been to quite a few places. I did a lot of traveling, and a lot of that infills the work that I've written.
Well, it shows in the book, because you've actually been to these places. It's obvious that you didn't just Google Los Angeles or Google Hollywood Park, for example. You've actually been there.
Oh, yeah. A huge fan of American horse racing.
Okay. I used to be too.
Did you really?
Oh, sure. I lived in Las Vegas for many years. I used to spend a lot of time. I had a tennis academy, and it was right next to the sports book at the Sheraton Desert Inn. So, yeah, so I spent a lot of time in there with a bunch of old guys who taught me a lot about horse racing. I won some money down there.
Oh, nice.
I had to stop, though, because it started becoming an obsession.
I still am. I still obsess. It's my main hobby. Obviously, British horse race, because I live in Britain. Mm-hmm. But when I visited America, I made sure that wherever I went to see the races. And places like Pimlico, Laurel Park, Hollywood Park. I'd never managed to get to San Diego, Santa Anita rather, but I absolutely love American horse racing. I still watch it now. And horse racing is a huge theme throughout Hollywood Shakedown.
Of course it is. Now, how much time did you spend researching and writing this book?
It took me 8 months to write, actually. But then again, I wrote full-time in between. I was unemployed at the time, actually. I was in between jobs, and I wrote it more or less non-stop. And so it took me 8 months to write. And I worked with my good friend Kelly Sherwood, who proofread each chapter for me and made comments and made alterations and offered me advice and editorial input on that. And it took about, in total, it took about a year to produce. And the research was really easy because it contains a lot of my interests. Chess, football, that's British football, soccer as you call it, horse racing, gangs, gangsters, mermaids, all sort of the surreal stuff that you read in Hollywood Shakedown. But it was stuff that I've been interested in for many years. So it was easy to research, but a very difficult book to write because it's quite a complex book, as you know. It is a complex book. How long did it take? Just under 8 months to write, first draft, and then probably about 2 to 3 months to just to get it right. Wow. Originally, it was 120,000 words, Phil. Yeah, but I managed to get it down to 108. Thank you. Thanks. Yeah, so I got rid of a lot of monologues and I got rid of a lot of stuff just to make it tighter. So the stuff you got, the book that you read is actually the tightest version of all. So being a writer, that's about the fourth draft. Right, I figured because you have great dialogue in this book. I mean, that's one of your specialties. In chess, yeah, I play chess quite a bit, so maybe we'll have to play sometime online. I was interested in the relationship with how I make several comments about internet poker. Do you play internet poker, Phil? Absolutely, I do. I play 7-card Hold'em. Only on Facebook, though. I used to do it in the betting parlors, but like I said before, sometimes you can get obsessed with these things. I know. I've been the same way with internet poker. And I'm an ex-athlete, so you know what? When I lose, I get pissed off and I want to win. And you know how that goes when you're gambling. It's not such a good thing. So in terms of there was in the early times of the internet, when internet poker started becoming quite big, there was somebody trying to set up an internet chess site, and he never got anywhere because of the money angle with internet poker. And internet poker is extremely simple to play, isn't it? You can learn in 5 minutes, whereas chess can take a lifetime to learn concept. Absolutely, you're absolutely correct. Now, so I thought that chapter in there was basically the comment on that. That was brilliant, by the way. Thanks. Glad you enjoyed it. I did. I really did. Hollywood Shakedown seems to be a different concept and genre than what we're used to seeing from you. Was that planned, or did it just happen that way? The weakest part of that book in independent literature is it has no genre. I can't place that comfortably in any genre on Amazon, in a bookshop. A bookshop owner would look at Hollywood Shakedown. I've no idea where to put this, and I don't. It seems to be a book that's without a genre. So when you mention genre, I really can't answer that because I just don't know. It's quite a complex book with a lot of influences. There's a bit of fantasy in there. There's a bit of fiction. There's a bit of fact. There's a bit of sport. There's a bit of thriller. It's something for everyone, and yet I found it difficult to place. I don't know. I probably would put it at a gangster book. Would you really? I think I would, yeah. I think that you probably get a lot of play out of it that way, too, because you have that element in there. You understand what I mean? And yeah. Or you could put it in the adventure category, because that's really what it is. It's got it all. Like you said, that's what I would do. I don't know. Maybe I'm probably not the best person to ask about that. But Buddy Chin, how was he born? How did you come up with Buddy Chin, and how long does it usually take for you to develop a character like Buddy? Buddy is originally his name was Buddy Chinaski, which is the son of the fictional alter ego of great 70s LA author Charles Bukowski, which I thought was quite an original concept. It's very Bukowski-esque. I'm a huge fan of Bukowski. I collect his work, I collect his novels, and I collect his poetry. And I thought it'd be an interesting concept to have the fictional son of a fictional alter ego, the main character. So obviously I read a lot of Charles Bukowski's work, and then I developed it over time, just reading Charles's work and imagining how Buddy would be. What would the son of Charles Bukowski, who didn't have a son, what would a son be like of Charles Bukowski? And it came up with Buddy. And Buddy's named, by the way, Buddy's named after a hamster.
Okay, great.
My favourite pet of all time is called Buddy Marvel, little hamster, and I called it after a hamster for no other reason than that. But I like the name Buddy, don't you?
Yeah, sure. Why not, Buddy? That's what we say back home. Hey, Buddy.
It's a very popular name in America, isn't it?
It's a very popular nickname, is what it would be. But yeah, you're absolutely right. Now, Mark, I ask every author that comes on this program the same question, and I'm going to ask you: give us 3 reasons why we should buy Hollywood Shakedown.
One, it's well written. I do know it's well written. It's the best review that I've got. Everybody that's read it has enjoyed it. I've not had one. I had one bad review in the early days from someone that read Twilight. Someone who's going to read Twilight is not going to enjoy this book. But everybody else has read it, has really enjoyed it. It's a rollicking read. It's fast. It's clever as well. I wrote it as a intellectual or an intelligent airport novel, so you could pick it up in New York, fly over to San Francisco and read this all the way through on there, and you'd be absorbed. I think it's got good, strong characters. And as you pointed out earlier on, Phil, I think my favourite part of that book is the dialogue between Buddy and Simon. So if you like Buddy movies, you're going to like this book because it's a Buddy book. I think it's my best book, and I think it's something that I benchmark against all my other work. And I think it's a really fast and exciting read, and I think people will really enjoy it.
Well, I'm sure they'll enjoy it. When you read my review, you'll see that how much I enjoyed it and how much I think you should get out there and buy this book out there. Now, what's next for you, Mark? I'm
writing a sequel to my football hooligan book. You probably wouldn't be familiar with that concept, but there's a big situation in Europe with football hooligans. I'm writing a sequel to that. That's easily my best-selling book at Green Wizard. More people have read my book called Ultraviolence than any other book, so I'm going to write a sequel to that. It's a no-brainer, Phil, really. If more people bought Hollywood Shakedown, and as I say, I have a difficulty selling it because of the genre. If more people bought it, I owe this to Kelly and some of the big, and Clive and some of my friends who've been big supporters of the book, to write a sequel to that too. So I'd like to write a sequel to that next year, obviously if I can get some traffic. But I constantly write books. I'm always writing, and I'm just about to spend the winter writing probably 2 to 3 books, starting with the sequel to Ultraviolence. So I'm going to be really busy. And there's one more thing I'd like to say. I'm editing an anthology called Reality Bites, which is 12 short stories from brilliant independent authors, talking about their lives and how they've turned misery and despair into hope and joy. So I'm hoping to get that out before Christmas, sort of like a Green Wizard Christmas special, if you like. So it's incredibly busy over here, Phil.
Sounds like it. I'll tell you what, Mark, thanks so much for coming on the program, and definitely keep us up to date on what you're doing. And I can't wait to read the Ultraviolence book, because I'm very interested in the hooligan and the shenanigan stuff in sports. Very interested. Yeah. In fact, I plan on doing a show on that. In fact,
well, I'd be happy to come on again. I've really enjoyed it.
Perfect.
You've been a great host in the time we've known each other, Phil. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. All right, folks, I'll tell you what. If you want to get a book that's just going to keep you absorbed and keep you guessing and second guessing and third guessing and fourth guessing and always wondering what Buddy's up to next and who he's going to run into, then Hollywood Shakedown is the book for you. You'll be able to read my review and obtain the book in the show notes.
This is the Phil Naessens Show.
And it's the reason Al Gore invented the Internet.
And we'll be right back after these brief announcements.
Do you know your fantasy sports? Would you like to make money at it? DraftStreet.com and the Phil Naessens Show would like to help you get started making money playing fantasy sports today. And we'll even give you the chance to get started making money today for free. On me. That's right. All you have to do is head on over to PhilNaessens.com or visit the show notes for this show. Click the Draft Street image at the top of the page and start making money playing fantasy sports at DraftStreet.com today.
Hi, this is Gary Mack of Mets Musings, and I hope you'll join me each and every week as I recap all of the comings and goings on in New York Mets baseball. I'll have guests on from all across Mets Nation giving their insights and analysis on the New York Mets. And you can follow me on Twitter at MetsMusings1, as well as on Facebook. The group name is Mets Musings. So tune in weekly to the Mets Musings, available at MetsMusings.com, Stitcher.com, iTunes.com, iHeartRadio, and of course, BaseballTalkRadio.com, the home of great baseball talk shows.
Riveting talk radio.
Everybody get up. People cannot get away from the internet.
Well, I think, and it probably comes from porn as well. You know what I mean, that's got to be a big, strong thing.
Oh, that's gross. That's disgusting.
And it freaks me out.
My cheeks are sealed.
We love talk radio.
Bend over, baby.
Do you see what I'm saying?
WeirdTalkSuperstation.com.
Better than sex. I don't know how good sex is.
We're going to do a lot of drinking.
Talk radio. Bend over, baby. That was great.
Stitcher Smart Radio is an award-winning, free mobile application that lets you listen to your favorite shows and discover the best of news, entertainment, and sports on demand. Now you don't even need a Wi-Fi or a cell connection to listen to shows like The Phil Naessens Show. Never miss another show. It's real simple. Just go to Stitcher.com and download the free app today. And never miss another Phil Naessens Show. Hi, this is Phil Naessens from This Week in Tennis and The Phil Naessens Show. Max Sports Channels offers the best in sports talk radio, as well as great music 24 hours a day. It's my daily destination, and I hope it's yours. The sports talk begins each and every day at 3 p.m. and it ends around 9 p.m. Special programming on the weekends, and in between all that, the hottest music on the internet. That's Max Sports Channels. Make it your daily destination.
You're listening to AFR, the Armed Forces Radio Network.
And now, back to the Phil Naessens Show.
By the way, ladies and gentlemen, as always, this stuff in lieu of actual entertainment.
Welcome back to the Phil Naessens Show. The Indiana Pacers, lots of teams, lots of people are talking about them, saying they're the best team in the East. And I think I tend to agree with them. Joining me tonight to discuss all these things and more, please welcome from IndyCornrows.com, Tom Lewis is in the house. Tom, how you doing, man? Welcome to the show.
I'm doing great, Phil. Good talking with you again.
It's good talking with you. I missed you last week, but I was under the weather. Anyway, the Indiana Pacers, I wanted to say the Indy Cornrows, the Indiana Pacers, lots of people are talking about them nationwide now. They're saying, or they're questioning whether the Pacers are the best team in the East. What do you say to that?
Well, despite some big bumps on the road out west this week, I still think they're the best team in the East, just because of their depth and when it comes to playoff time, the style of play that they they bring to the court with the focus on defense and their size and depth. I think that puts them at the top in the East right now.
Oh, it has to. I have to agree with you. I think it has to. what impresses me most about them is that when they do lay that egg, and they have a couple of times recently, they come back and fight strong, and that's the sign of a good team. Now, one of the stats I was looking at this week, I was looking at the schedule, and Indiana has had the third easiest schedule thus far in the East, but Miami has had the first easiest schedule. And that tells me that Indiana's beating the teams they're supposed to beat, and they're beating a lot of other teams along the way. Miami's not doing that, though. Miami's up and down. They don't seem like the same team that they were last season, do they?
Yeah, they're in an interesting time right now. I mean, they're obviously trying to, manage Dwayne Wade's playing time, and so he's having a lot of games off, and they don't have the normal depth that they've had. They are trying to save, a little money on the side, I think. They let, Mike Miller go, and then that's forcing Ray Allen to play a lot of minutes, and he's not getting any younger, and they had the trade for Joel Anthony, and that seemed like it was just to save money and not really improve them. I mean, they're actually they have Dwayne Wade and LeBron James, but it's crazy to say that their wing depth might be more of an issue this year than it has in the past, and so it'll be interesting to see how they go down the stretch. I mean, LeBron does obviously wipes away everybody's problems when he's on the court, but he's going into heavy minutes, especially when Wade is out, and it'll be interesting to see if he can hold up all the way through the season, which I'm sure he will. He just physically seems that's never going to be a problem. He could go all day, but they are just a little bit different team this year, and there's a little different dynamic, and with all the contracts situations after this season that are up in the air. You never know what might happen down there, and that's one reason I think the Pacers are in a little better shape, because they are so much more tied together right now and focused on primary goal of each game, and the Heat seem to have a few other issues going on around them.
Well, that's exactly correct too. LeBron James has played more minutes without Dwayne Wade this season than with him, and that's got to bode for an interesting thing come later on when contract time is up. Does LeBron stay there? Does he went there to play with Dwayne Wade, and if Dwayne Wade's not there to help him, that's going to make things interesting, I think.
Yeah, or if Dwayne Wade is there, but a shell of himself and continuing to fade away a little bit here as his knee just doesn't seem to get better. Is he going to want to, try and make another run with him? He wants to get championships. He might try to set up a different situation for him. It's hard to think of where he might go. The options don't seem to be there, but I guess he's going to have some power at the end of the year. That's for sure. I'm sure he'll be able to set up a situation for himself, whether it's in Miami or elsewhere. But it's going to be, like we were saying, there's a lot of moving parts at play now in Miami.
Exactly correct. That is exactly right. I think Stephen A. Smith says he's going back to Cleveland. It's more than 50% sure, but who knows what that means. Now, back to the Pacers. Lance Stephenson, Roy Hibbert. Do you think they deserve nods for the All-Star game?
Yeah, I do. I think Hibbert definitely deserves it. His defense this year has been incredible, and really the first month and a half of the season he was devastating, and teams actually stopped trying to go at the rim on him, and so his numbers have kind of leveled out a little bit as far as blocks and things like that, but his presence in the paint and around the rim, unless the team's hitting their perimeter shots, he's the X factor that gives the Pacers a strong advantage and allows their defense, their other defenders to be aggressive and go after making plays and tighten things up because he's back there. And so, there's pretty, without Hibbert in there, they wouldn't be in the shape that they are in. So for that, I think Hibbert deserves the All-Star nod. And he got out of his fourth game against Denver, and it's no coincidence that they're 1-3 when he fouls out of games, and the one win they had was at Utah when the game was kind of out of hand anyway. So he's a big impact, good or negative, or good or bad, depending upon how he's playing, how the refs are calling the game. But for the most part, he's been good this year for the Pacers, and definitely defending at an all-star level. As for Lance, he, especially at home, really makes the Pacers cook and can take them to another plane where they're knocking teams out big time. And his overall game has improved drastically. He's able to score. He's able to rebound, and his defense, for the most part, he has his moments where he's a little off defensively, but for the most part, he's been a strong cog in that starting unit, which has been so impressive. He's definitely a bubble all-star guy, though. There are other players at his position that are, probably worthy from other teams, and if you kind of think, well, would he be getting considered if the Pacers didn't have such a good record? Maybe not as much, but that's all part of it. So I think one thing that might hurt Lance though as well is a lot of his extracurricular actions on the floor. He likes to get under players' skin, and he has a lot of theatrics in his game, which really help fuel his game, but it does rub other players and coaches the wrong way. And since the coaches are voting, a few of them may pass on voting for Lance, since there's some other players with comparable numbers or impact that they could vote for and leave Lance sitting home at All-Star break.
Yeah, I think it should be interesting to see what they wind up doing. I think that comes out this week, so we'll have to wait and see. One of the things that I noticed this past week is, and I've talked about this with you before, where you have to shoot threes if you're going to beat Indiana. And one of the things that I noticed, especially against Golden State, was how really good their three-point defense is when they want to. They're incredible. Yep. They were incredible against Golden State, and then they flipped a switch and didn't do so well against Phoenix. How do you explain that as a reporter? How do you explain that?
They struggled on this trip with some of that defense. They get away from home. I mean, they've been so devastating at home, and they like to say defense travels, but it does depend on the matchup as well, though. For some reason, teams that can stretch the big guys out away from the rim a little bit are causing the Pacers problems. I mean, they had problems with Atlanta just because they didn't play, normal big guys around the rim, and the Pacers don't like to blitz the pick and roll. They like to leave Hibbert back to stay around that rim, and with a player like Dragic, who's just playing at a really high level, working the ball on the perimeter, he's going to get shots. And when they knock him down, it seems like, these teams that get going, it's like it just gets contagious. And one guy starts hitting shots and everybody follows in. I mean, they even, they had the same problem with Sacramento as well. And Sacramento was throwing shots in from all over the place with Marcus Thornton and Isaiah Thomas. And some of it is just great shot making at a high level. And they don't mind giving up the long two, but in a lot of these instances when players get hot and they're scrambling around, they're just making making big time shots, and there's not much you can do about it.
Yeah, that's a good answer too. I'll tell you what, Thornton went for 42? That's just bizarre. I wouldn't have called that at all. But they do seem to play good against these teams that can really shoot, though. They seem to get their A game up when it really matters. But the thing is when you look at the East, though, Tom, you don't see the bombs away boys in the East like you do in the West. So that's going to bode even better for Indiana come playoff time, because they don't have to worry about too many of those teams knocking them out from the three-point line.
Right, that's exactly right. And I mean, they're built, let's face it, they're built to play Miami. And that's a team that's not going to have a point guard that can, dominate the ball and free up shots and, kill them from behind the arc. So, they're in a good spot that way as well. I mean, they've also lost 6 of their 9 losses are the second game of a back-to-back on the road. So, fortunately, they're not back-to-backs in the playoffs either. But yeah, these teams that they've been playing out west, they just get hot, and next thing you know, the Pacers are scrambling from so far behind and using up so much effort that it kind of compounds that the problems they have defensively, where they're not as focused on defense. They're trying to come back.
Yep, that's what's going to make the playoffs so interesting and make Indiana so deadly. Now, one of the questions we get, and we get a lot of them here, as you know, one of our listeners wants to know, who do you think is the most important bench player for the Indiana Pacers right now? Who do you desperately need every night the Pacers take the floor?
Well, I think the probably the most vital guy that they've had or that they need to play well, and he has played well, is C.J. Watson, because he's just so solid, and he can come in and play defense and run things and play alongside Lance Stephenson with the second unit. But as far as I would, for a while I would say Danny Granger, but when the Pacers is really playing well, the guy who plays well off the bench is Luis Scola. And when he is able to knock down that open, 15 to 17-foot shot with that reserve unit, that frees up Lance to do more and Granger to do more. And he's been a little bit up and down, and so when he's playing well, I feel like that's when they're at their best. So I'm not saying he's the best. He's been the best bench player, but as far as important and the guy that kind of is a bellwether for how that reserve unit does, I'd say it was Scola.
That's what I was going to say, Luis Scola, because that was a great addition. Great summer addition to that basketball team. He makes all the difference in the world because he can stretch out and shoot the ball, and he goes in there and bangs. Anyway, great stuff today, Tom. Thank you so much for being on the show with me.
All right, Phil. We'll talk to you later.
All right, that was Tom Lewis, and you can find him at IndyCornrows.com, and that's going to wrap it up for today's Phil Naessens Show. I want to thank Kevin Lipe, Tom Lewis, for making this an amazing show. Tomorrow, Amar will be here, and we'll troll on through the entire NBA division by division. Until then, y'all take care of yourselves. Be good, and most importantly, thanks for listening.
Ladies and gentlemen, my mother thanks you, my father thanks you, my sister thanks you, and I thank you.
You just listened to a pre-recorded edition of the Phil Naessens Show. Like us on Facebook or follow us on Twitter at FlashTennis31. Thanks for listening, and see you tomorrow.